find you odd, so convinced in the truth of all that the true truth's truly gone. And yes, there's a day. Anytime a man say there's not, then you know that he lost the plot. It ain't work. Hooking up curses and slurs, smoking my brain in the mud. Used to have powder to push, now I smoke pounds of the kush. Holy, I'm burning the bush. Now I give a fuck about none of this shit. You run her over and out of this bitch.
Comment allez-vous?
I'm doing good. I'm okay.
I'm gonna start right now because I'm really happy to see you together because I was a big fan of Koflo, of course. I discovered you on your first mixtape, which was an album, and I discovered you on Popping Tags. Like everybody. And to me, it was natural to see those two scenes together because this is two schools of people who love rap.
Absolutely.
And just rapping, you know? Because everybody was telling like it was a backpacker scene.
Rock steadily for more than just dope.
And I hated people telling me that I was listening to backpacking rap. You know, I was listening to rap.
No doubt.
And it was the same with all the Dungeon Connection and all what came after. I was like, those guys are not dirty South, they're like dirty rappers, you know? They're MCing. And when I see that you were connected together, I thought about the Bomb Squad and Ice Cube.
Now I'm in the pen with the soap in the rope. I said it before and I still taunt it. Every motherfucker with a color is most wanted.
Like the connection of two sides of the US, you know?
So did we.
Yeah.
So did we.
Was it a reference to you?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It was one of the first records that we bonded over when we talked about making music. And we sat down. I went to Atlanta to meet up with him. We just sat in a room smoking weed and talking shit and basically talked for like 2 hours about music. And one of the big influences that we shared together was Ice Cube and America's Most Wanted, and when he, you know, left NWA.
Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube, from the gang called niggas with attitude.
And came to the East Coast and did an entire album with the Bomb Squad, who were the gods of East Coast production and really just rap production at the time. We knew it made sense, you know what I mean? And you know it makes sense because you're a real head. You really know the music, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people who didn't have that history of knowing those records, when they found out that me and Mike were fucking with each other, they didn't understand.
Yeah, to me that was natural.
To us it made sense.
Yeah. Even to you, Mike, when I heard the way like you were rapping, and there is that school with Outkast.
Old school beggars to new school fools. Cats keep it chopping like kangaroos. But stupid on the water, we ain't trying to lose. Take out we got, they done changed the provide.
To be able to rap on every kind of beat.
Yeah.
So what was your reaction when you heard his beat for the first time?
Yeah, I was born to be on LP beats. Yeah, I told him that the first day. I went home and told my wife that. I was just like, I found the guy I'm supposed to be like slaughtering his beats, you know what I mean? That was just, I'd been looking for that sound. I think Dre had tried to find that sound early on with my first single, Action.
K-I-L-L, this is the name that can't call to the game. Not like these rappers who sit at the same.
And interestingly enough, when Puffy was actually trying to do a deal with Big Boy, for me and for other acts on the label, which included Janelle Monáe at the time, I had done, say, like 10 records, and 5 were like, sounded like toward what Elle and I do now in terms of rap, what happened with rap music and forward. And 5 were kind of like traditional, whatever was happening at the time. He was like, yo, you can rap over anything. He's like, and both are good, but I like this, you know what I mean? So the first time we got in the room together, I knew that I was gonna be making music for him. If he was down, I knew he was gonna do my first album in rap music in terms of that record, the reintroduction of sorts, and I knew we'd keep making music together in some capacity.
Today, everybody is listening to rap music. It's the new pop. But nobody listened to rap, you know. Everybody was saying that Company Flow or even Candy Balox were undergrounds, and everybody's rapping like you right now, like you were rapping like 10 years ago, and it's the same for you. You know.
Thank you for noticing.
I know that.
Cash flow, car full of females, bad hoes. We in the DR, in it fuck rapper boy getting out of line. I pray the preacher beat him to the goddamn ER.
Everybody is rapping from what you were doing like 10 years ago right now, like using the fast raps and the multisyllabics and to be able to slow the flow.
Yeah, and the subject matter. I think both of us, if people have kind of caught up with some of the subject matter, whether it's, you know, vehemently revolutionary, whether it's dystopian, or whatever people described us as, I think the world has caught up. member of our management team says, you know, I never thought you guys were wrong or you were wrong. See, I just thought the world hadn't caught up yet. And it just seems like he and I caught each other at a perfect time, and we seem to have caught an audience and the world at a perfect time, you know.
We are the murderers pair. That with the jail and we murdered the murderers there. Then with the hell and discovered the devil delivered some hurt and despair.
Tell me, how do you produce? Do you still use like your old MPC, or did you pass to the computers and you?
It's grown. I mean, I never was an MPC guy. I was a Sonic EPS 16 plus guy. So there's like me and like Muggs and RZA all use the same, you know, sampler. It's a keyboard sampler. I use it a couple of times on every record. That's my first love.
How did you create these sounds?
I have a process. I have an army of equipment and synths, and I, you know, and years and years of working on figuring out what my style is, what my sound is.
Because people were talking about anti-groove when they were talking about your sounds. I was like, it's so new and so disruptive, and we never know what you're listening to. It's electronic, it's soulful. How did you create that sound?
I just think it's just honestly just a reflection of my influences, as you know, like anyone. You know, I just think that I have a lot of influence that I never separated them. You know, I never separated my love for rock music or electronic, you know, early electronic music from the '80s that I grew up on. You know. From my love of R&B and soul, and you know, it all made sense to me. It all came together, from film scores to all of it. Because when you're collecting records, you know, you're just pulling sounds, and that's how I started making beats, was just pulling sounds from things. I never was really doing too much just looping, you know what I mean? And that's, I think, where my sound grew a little bit different than other people's. I was always just sampling to get sound. When we got together with Run the Jewels, I knew that I had to make sure that what we did had a certain bounce to it to give Mike a platform.
A new addition to the art of the old code that's fully retarded and put a part in your bone.
You know, to honor both of our sort of heritages and create something that would sound new for Run the Jewels, you know? So hopefully that's how it comes across, you know?
And you know, a lot of guy, even of the guy that you're working with like Andre 3000 or Big Boy, are rapping or producing. Who is the best rapper and producer? This is because he's here.
Nah. Tell him.
No, I'm the best.
I've said it to the point. You know, it's like I can, you know, my friend might blush, but I truly believe that, and I don't mean it from the capacity of my friend and my rap partner. Like just smoking weed, sitting, listening to rap by myself. Like you can't show me a better producer and a rapper for a full solo score. This my man, 100 grand. He the best at it. You know?
Can we talk about one word, gentrification? New York is not the New York that we loved. This is not the hip-hop city anymore.
The New York that I grew up in is gone. I live in New York. I probably will always live in New York because that's where my friends and my family are. But there are a lot of people who have been fucked in the process of making what we know as Brooklyn and all these other places sort of safe for, it's the same thing that happens everywhere. The money comes in, you're trying to make it safe for people who are visiting. And in order to do that, and when I say safe, I mean safe, but in order to do that, you got to move people out, you know? And so, yeah, gentrification is an insidious process. The money's coming in, you got to get people out because you're raising the rents, it's fucked up. Then you just go to the next neighborhood where it doesn't cost, you know, where it's not expensive and artists can go and they can actually make a living and lead a life that's not based on just having money, you know?
Can we talk about the cultural gentrification, because I was talking to this about Young Thug. In US, you have like the music media who are fascinating by what they'll call ignorant rap. But
it's not cool, but once again, I don't give a fuck.
Today, a lot of new medias like fancies or hipster like discover that they love hip hop and they think that they love that, and they are always fascinated by the guy who will have problems, the guy who will have drug issues or who've been in jail.
They're tourists.
Yeah, they're tourists, you know? What do you think about that?
I think artists travel through every class and culture. That's the beauty of being an artist. You can find someone in the worst ghetto in the world and they're familiar with an Andy Warhol painting. If you didn't grow up in the housing projects with Young Thug in Atlanta, if you didn't grow up in those projects, then you're still a voyeur. You're not a gentrifier, but you're still a form of voyeurism because you're hearing about his life and his struggles. But we all are voyeurs. That's the beauty of being an artist. I didn't see the world as Dolly saw the world, so I'm a voyeur into his world and I accept it, but I'm by no means Dolly or from that experience. It's an experience I'm sharing. What I do respect about the hipsters is that culturally, they seek to really get it. Versus if you look at gentrification of music 60 years ago when it was rock and roll, it was cool to like rock and roll, but it wasn't cool to like black people. So it's cool to like Chuck Berry's music. But dancing with Chuck Berry could get Chuck Berry killed. And that's not the same. Now, the art of Young Thug brings people together. So in clubs in Atlanta, you see kids who were kept out of the city by their parents, who are now hipsters moving into the city, in the same clubs next to black kids who grew up in the city, and those kids are coexisting, and out of it you're seeing partnerships, you're seeing companies, you're seeing streets that were formerly decimated by poverty now be co-partnered. So I'm not saying gentrification works or is right. I'm saying if you're smart about it and if you're respectful about it, it can be something besides insidious. And what you call musical gentrification also has allowed Young Thug to go from being just a club artist in Atlanta to one of the biggest stars in the world.
What the fuck is so early about? Your dad broke you at your girl house. Yeah. I'm selling our shows now.
And now have opened and created a lane for other kids from Atlanta. That doesn't happen without the hipster dollar. That doesn't happen without that appreciation. So long as the respect is there, and so long as the appreciation for it as art, and not just some weird voyeuristic thing I'm looking at, now I think it's fair. Because we love all rock artists because they do drugs and they're depressed. You love Kurt Cobain for the same reason. You know?
Yeah, agreed. And I think that gentrification has a very negative connotation, you know? By the nature of the word, I think it's negative. So what you hope is that you're taking the interest from other people in this music and you're turning it into integration. You're turning it into an integrated scene. Absolutely. Where people are appreciating and supporting artists that are outside of their social class that they are interested in and genuinely taking an interest in. Gentrification is the pushing out of another class.
And gentrification is driving their prices down. Push them out.
Yeah, right. I think it's dangerous to sit around and analyze why people are listening to music too much, you know, because it's hard enough to get people to listen to music. You just have to be a little bit hopeful about it. You just want people to listen to music and enjoy it, because at the end of the day, that does bring people together.
There is something more that the music that everybody's listening right now on streaming who doesn't appear in the culture is the hip-hop culture and the values. Like personally, I grew up with those values. I wouldn't be there in front of you without those values. I would never be writing or doing anything without this culture and what she bring to me.
And that's beautiful. And you were there when a time when that was taught to you. I was raised in a time where I was taught the ideas of style from people who were graffiti writers. I always learned my philosophy from that. We did happen to grow up in a time where that was something that was passed on. But I don't think that means that we're in a situation where we're better or we're more honorable than anyone else. I just think that we took advantage of something that was happening around us at the time. We were lucky enough to have that instilled in us because it meant something to us, and it still does. And me and Mike still carry those things with us. But at the same time, we recognize and understand and don't beat up anybody who hasn't had that same experience, you know?
This hip-hop culture is not being like nostalgic. It's always to think about the future.
Exactly.
And moving forward, not about like it was better before. That's what I had the most.
That shit.
You know,
Yeah. Fuck that shit.
The before guys have to stay before.
We don't talk that before shit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Every time we get down, every time we do an interview, there's a couple of different types of interviews. We'll do interviews with people who basically just want to talk about how nothing's as good as it used to be. You know what I mean? And we don't.
Ice cream doesn't even taste sweet anymore.
Yeah, I don't even like ice cream anymore. Remember ice cream when you used to get the cup with the strawberry and the chocolate? Yeah. Where the fuck is that? Yeah. We don't think like that. You know, we don't. And the reason we don't think like that is because artistically we never even took a moment to look backwards. You know, we're always trying to keep our heads in the next place so that we can do something new for us.
Yeah.
You know,
because when I love like Wu-Tang.
I grew up on the crime side, the New York Times side. Staying alive was no job.
It was like the future, not the past.
Absolutely.
You know, when I discovered them, I was like, okay, they're in the future.
Absolutely.
How do you explain that this is like the cancer, you know, the disease, to be nostalgic in the hip-hop?
I think when you call it nostalgia, you kind of label it and say it's verses. I think it just, you make it lame. I think when, like rock and roll, as influence grows, things progress. So if you like blues music, you'll probably love Led Zeppelin because you'll hear blues progress to the degree that they progressed it to. So when you're listening to Kendrick's first album,
and then she started feeling herself like no one else in this apartment.
Man, it reminds me so much of a hybrid of Outkast, Aquemini, and references from that area that it makes me feel good in a nostalgic way, and it pushes the craft forward.
Yeah.
You know, when I hear his double entendres, it's like the first time I heard a young Big Boy. I had never heard anyone do those type of flips, and so
it's the same with Action Bronson.
Exactly.
I'm staring at the man inside the mirror. The reflection shows a wolf, though. Goddamn, I'm still cute, ho.
So us having grown up in a time where the rules weren't written, they were being created in terms of style. Like, it was you had to master your style, and then now we're at a point where those styles have influenced others. So, like, I really love hearing nostalgia born without an old man calling it nostalgia, but rather a young man or any artist taking that style and progressing it to the degree that their talents take them. So,
if you were ever going to point to a certain era of music and say this is when it was perfected and anything else after that is not good, you're lying to yourself. All you're saying is, this is the last time I cared about music.
When I listen to a track like Reagan,
Why did Reagan and Obama both go after Gaddafi? We invading sovereign soil, going after oil.
Reagan was an actor who have been president, but the question is, who ran the script?
Aha. Aha. Yes, that is the question.
That is the question.
That is a question that when I listen to your song, because you're talking about the surveillance, the security.
I don't have the answers, but that is the question that everyone on the street out there should be asking themselves. You know,
and identifying the question is almost powerful enough sometimes. You know,
the two most powerful things is being able to say I don't know, and the other is to question. You know what you're seeing is not true and not right. So the question is, what's behind it?
This is why I love your lyrics, because this is really easy to be into the conspiracy theories, and this is really hard to be in the truth.
Yeah. I'm not speaking in that record. There's no conspiracy. There's there's only the questions of what, why, and there's the factual, first verse of saying we all have this capitalistic mentality in which we are feeding on people less than us. And the second one in that I saw drug policy dramatically affect prison population and poverty and people in poverty in my community. That's not a theory. If you all have heard of the Tuskegee experiment.
600 black men, 399 with syphilis and 201 without the disease, were induced to participate in the experiment. The men with syphilis were not told they were infected and were not treated, even after penicillin was discovered to be an effective cure for the disease. That was a theory forever. There was a conspiracy theory that the government allowed black men to have syphilis so they could study the disease. My great-grandfather's father was one of those men, so it was never a conspiracy theory. It was true, and then when the government later admitted it, it wasn't, conspiracy theory anymore. It was, hey, we did this, So for me, it's not like I run around believing every conspiracy or I write records about but things that I think loop or parallel again, I think you get them off, you say them in a personal way, and you help people just be, looking out for it in their own lives. That's it.
We were constantly asking those questions, or we both had the experience of seeing things behind the curtain a little bit. And it's not something that, for me, I always tell people, like, look, I'm not happy when I'm right about, this shit. You know what I mean? Like, when I did a song called Drones Over Brooklyn. There goes El-P again, crazy science fiction. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I'm just talking about the same drones that were flying in other countries that are killing civilians being in Brooklyn. That's not crazy or science fiction. It's just logical, The next year, everyone kept sending me articles. Drone over Brooklyn, drones over Brooklyn, drone stores open up in Brooklyn, We both distrust and have a real definitive criticism of the power structures in this world.
Donald Trump sent some bombs to Syria.
Sur ordre du président Donald Trump, les navires de guerre américains ont lancé entre 50 et 60 missiles contre une base aérienne du gouvernement syrien.
What do you think about it?
Wasn't America doing that 6 months ago?
I think we're pretty much dropping bombs somewhere.
Yeah, we were dropping
day.
bombs 6 years before that. We were dropping bombs 6 years before that. We were dropping bombs 6 years on that. That's what empires do.
What we think about it is that we wish that this wasn't happening, and we wish that peace were reigning on earth, and that we wish that our country was a country in which you could look to and believe was a good country with good policy.
It's wrong that all of these countries are at war, but we got to stop acting surprised, because you can only be surprised so many times, and then you have to get mad, and you have to say, we must end war. We all should get angry enough to stop war.
There's no war that you look at and say, oh, good, wonderful.
18-year-old boys globally should not be dying because old men are fighting for land and resources. It's in the record.
Cause I don't study war no more. I don't hate the poor no more. Getting more ain't what's more. Only thing more is the love.
How do you explain Trump?
I don't. I explain Trump like I explain empires. How do you explain Haiti and France? How do you explain Britain and Africa? How do you explain Russia and the Eastern Bloc? How do you explain any of them? That a small group of people are allowed to, by the proletariat, to rule for land and resources.
Stalin, Mussolini.
Yeah, and at any given time, there are more of the proletariat than there are the people in power. And at any given time, you can change that. All we have to do is decide that the systems, so whether it's Jacques Fresco, or whether it's Noam Chomsky, or whether it's Bukowski, all of these men have, for years before us, Fresco's 101 years old. Chomsky's at least 80 years old. Bukowski's dead. All these men have told us the same thing, and yet we keep allowing ourselves to be ruled by the same systems because we're comfortable. Like at some point, accept culpability. We can buy Nikes, we can have air conditioning and ice in our sodas, and to some degree, we don't care the next day. So the real answer to the question is, when will the proletariat get fed up?
I think
also... This is the first time I hear a US rapper talking me about the word proletarian.
Yes.
Yes, it's a word that we've both had at our disposal for a long time. I learned the word from George Orwell. Reading 1984. I think that the human race has a bit of a suicidal streak. I think that every 50 years or so, and maybe even less if you really look globally, and I don't think that we can admit it out loud, I don't think that we can really say it out loud, but I look at the madmen that historically and currently that we put in charge of the health and the welfare of the citizens of the different countries that we have on this planet. And I have to come to the conclusion, maybe we're rejecting ourselves, we're rejecting the truth, of who we are. We couldn't tell you, and people ask us about what's going on in the States, and all we can tell you is that it's bigger than just what's happening right now. It's bigger than an election. This is the result of hundreds, if not thousands of years of lead up. We try and make music that hopefully touches on some of it in the course of a friendship, because we joke, we smoke, we fuck, we don't. Fuck. No, we don't fuck.
We ain't that tight yet. We got wives and fiance.
I love when you say you love you.
Yeah, we do love each other. And
I just don't find them sexy.
When you say to yourself and look at yourself and say I love you.
What? Look at you? I love you. He knows I love him.
Yeah. We do it on stage every night.
Yeah. You gotta tell your homies you love them. It's not, like I got homies I've been homies with since kindergarten, 6th, 7th grade. Like before we hang up the phone, hey man, love you, man. Like it's important to let people know they're loved. You let people know when you're angry. I'm mad as shit at you. You let people know you love them.
I mean, you gotta understand, man. We're having the best time of our lives. This is big. This is a big deal to us. Not one day has gone by on this little adventure that we're on since we met that hasn't felt like it was amazing. Or there have been tough times, but when we get out on stage, when we're on the road, all of the shit that's happening for us now, you're not gonna find two people who have who are more grateful, because we've been through everything.
Is it a rebirth to you? Because when you met up, you were on depression, drug issues, both of you?
We both had come out of it, or were coming out of it, Yeah, it was right after. But you had to walk that journey alone, or with the people. I think more than anything, our women walked that. My wife walked mine with me, you know what I mean? So, but like as an empty cup, ready to get filled up. with, you know, new energy. You know what I mean? Our man Josh says you have to be like water, and I learned that. Like, I spent the first part of my life and career rather rigid. Thank you. So, you know, we even say I love you after we argue. You know, I might disagree with you, but I love you. Don't change the fact I love you, just don't agree with you. And so, you know, I think that's real power of Run the Jewels in our music. We love rap music.
Do this and you ruin my life. And I apologize if it seems like I got out of line, sir, cause I respect the badge and the gun.
We love making rap music, love rap music together, and you love doing it, you know, with your friends. So it makes the process easier, even on the hardest of days. I wouldn't trade it, you know, I wouldn't trade it for trying to understand what I'm doing or trying to make the perfect record. Now I know when I walk in the room with him, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna walk out with the perfect record. You know?
Run the Jewels has basically, from the moment we met, been an exercise in just letting the universe take over, you know? We didn't know what the fuck was gonna happen, but when we met each other, we let that collaboration happen, and I almost pushed it away. Because I was
shit out of it.
I mean, I almost pushed it away just in general because I was, you know, in my mind, I had spent too much time working with other people and I wanted to concentrate on my own music. I had had some things happen in my life that made me less happy doing it. You know, my friend had died and I was kind of, I lost, you know, I was down and I'm still trying to hold on to this idea that I had created when I was young. You know, I created Def Jux at 2000.
We was stealing gauze coming out of schools, ringing along somewhere and teachers with super soaker, then through the
And I was probably about 27. It took a lot of my energy, it took a lot of my time, and then my boy died, and I tried to keep going for a while, and then I had to step back. I mean, not only was it because financially the label was collapsing under the weight of you know, all of the CD sales had dropped in half. You know, it wasn't working anymore, and also I was just unhappy. I was, like you said, I was doing a lot of drugs. I was trying to escape reality every night. You know, luckily, thank God, you know, the universe had a way of shuffling you out of a situation, and I don't know if I would have come out of it if it hadn't just collapsed. Like Mike said, man, when we both met, we were good. We were feeling good. We were ready for the next thing. You know, yeah.
Can we talk about the cats?
I was high, sitting at my kitchen table, and I was like, if you give me $40,000, I'll do this. I'll recreate the album using cat sounds.
I'm lurking, serving all this you lack of purpose. I got him filled up with Frizzak like Miss Ike. Is you all Rizzike?
Yeah.
I'm talking to him about I don't know shit about cats.
So you've been involved into that cat story without doing anything?
I mean, I just don't know nothing about it. I've never owned one. We did a cool remix record that I didn't have to
talk about the record. The only reason that we did that record was because we saw an opportunity to give some money to some charity. So we gave the money to people, families who were victimized by the police, who had been, their children had been murdered by police officers unjustly.
La mort de Michael Brown, tué par un policier blanc, a ravivé ici aux États-Unis de profondes tensions raciales.
Ces Américains sont descendus dans la rue, massés devant la Maison Blanche. Les soutiens de la famille de Michael Brown sont désemparés.
The families of Eric Garner and Michael Brown. Eric Garner was a man who was killed in Staten Island in New York City.
One of the officers employed a chokehold. Moments later, while on the ground after complaining he couldn't breathe, he was dead.
And Michael Brown was in St. Louis, Ferguson, St. Louis. Yeah.
Brown, whom investigators say was not armed, was fatally shot.
And we gave all the money that we raised from that album to their families equally.
And the money that comes now goes to organizations that help free protesters who've been locked up protesting, to lawyers to pay them to keep that work done, which is very important.
Yeah.
So thanks to the cats.
Thanks to the cats.
Everybody was like yelling on Kanye West when he went to see Trump.
We've been friends for a long time.
But not you. Why?
Not my business. A musician can meet with whoever he wants to. Yeah, that's not my business. He's not the spokesperson for the community in the same way Jim Brown is. So I thought it was a more important thing that Jim Brown went, because for the last 50 years, he was one of the biggest and most famous football players in America. That's a pretty prestigious thing to be in America. And it's also pretty conservative. You know, the NFL is a conservative place. Colin Kaepernick is a very good football player who may not never play football again simply because he protests by kneeling during the playing of our national anthem. That's how conservative football is. And at the height of his career, he chose to stop playing football, to stop making that type of money and being enormously famous for football, simply to help people, not even just black people, to be a part of a people's movement in the same way the men from the 68 Olympics were, in the same way that Malcolm and Martin, in the same way that Fred Hampton, the same way he wanted a people's movement, and he's for the last 50 years done that. The fact that he sat with a president and on the other side of the tables told a version of the truth that was radically different from anything anyone ever has probably said to that president, I'm enamored by that. I think Jim Brown should be the person we're asking about and talking about, because for 50 years, he's fought this protracted struggle. So any musician can meet with whoever they want to. My question becomes, for the bigger society, you know, why aren't we more concerned with those people who we know are fighting on the behalf of people? I think that should be the question.
I love you.
I love you back. Thank you.
Hear what I say. We are the business today. Fuck shit is finished today. RT and J. We the new PB and J. We dropped the classic today.
What does it mean, run the jewels?
Run the jewels. I mean,
it used to mean you're getting robbed.
Is it like this?
Run the jewels. That was run the jewels. In New York, in the 80s, run the fucking jewels.
Yeah, anywhere, even in Atlanta, like, anywhere, run your shit. In Atlanta, just run your shit, yeah.
And so we just thought it wasn't a gangster-ass rap name, you know, because we both remembered that from the, you know, that was something that we always remembered. And I was listening to LL Cool J from the Mama Said Knock You Out album. He had a song called Cheesy Rap Blues.
Yeah. I used to be rolling like a millionaire. Cash in a flashbank, roller spare. Homeboys hanging champagne and girls. Give my main woman diamonds, my mistress pearl.
And in the song about Cheesy Rap Blues, he was talking about losing everything. And he was talking about losing all his friends and his money and getting desperate, you know, losing his career. And at the end of the song, he says, throw your hands in the air, wave them like you just don't care. Keep them there, run the jewels.
And wave them like you just don't care. Keep them there, run the jewels, run the jewels.
And when me and Mike got together, that whole concept of that song really rang true for me and me and Mike. Where I was like, man, we've kind of been there. We kind of know what it's like to lose everything. And we came out of losing everything feeling like, fuck that shit. I got this. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna take this shit over.
And people now are throwing this up as they climb mountains, as they get married, as they accomplish triathlons and marathons. It has become the people who we're rapping to, the people who get it, the people who know they're already free and enjoy the music. They're the jewel. They really showed us a whole different version. Like, I bought this chain because at 15 years old, an art teacher told me about this statue in Paris. So I had it made because I can steal the statue, right? And all of a sudden, I put it up, people like, for whatever reason, I got it, and kids are just going to the Louvre now throwing it. I never would have thought that those two worlds would cross-section, only in the world of
people show us
jewel.
pictures at births,
yeah,
on top of mountains, you know. So it turned into something more about self-empowerment.
Absolutely.
And if there's one message that we have, that we share, that we will say, people ask us, if there's a message, it's that everything that you have, everything that you need is actually lurking inside of you right now, and you have to just recognize it. You're the jewel. That's why the third album, the hands are gold.
But you don't know Jules, the French rapper.
No.
He's doing this sign, Jules.
Gang, gang.
Last question. The show is called Clique. What's your definition of a clique?
I don't know, man. I'm 40 years old. I don't have any cliques. I just have friends.
By U.S. law standards, it's 4 black guys standing on a corner together. You know, clique is usually, I don't know what you hear in a gun before you say, okay, take it off.
Click, click, watch cutter spit, brother, what a trip. Run the jewels live in the garden. Live from the garden.